And now we move on to Three Waters Activities Report. Helen Beaumont, is it?
Good afternoon. So this is our usual bi-monthly report for May and June, and of course it usually goes to the Three Waters Infrastructure and Environment Committee rather than to full council, but it is our standard report. So just touching on the highlights, water reform of course continues, and this council is cooperating with the local transition and the National Transition Unit to prepare for a transfer of services if indeed that goes ahead. And also, of course, this council made a submission on the Water Services Bill, and I understand that an oral submission will be made next week to the Select Committee on that. In terms of compliance with resource consents across the board is excellent, with the exception of the Christchurch Wastewater Treatment Plant, and that, of course, is around the ongoing issues with odours. We submitted our annual report on the new comprehensive stormwater network discharge consent, and that outlines the progress that we've made both with our stormwater management plans for each catchment and the works that's been done under that consent. Water safety plans are being progressed right across the district, and the Christchurch plan has been with Taumata Arawai since May, so we're awaiting on feedback on that plan. We've been doing a lot of work in terms of supporting the planning teams to address the infrastructure implications and requirements because of the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan and the various changes that we all understand going into the Resource Management Act and our district plan. In terms of the most frequent interaction with our customer and community, we've maintained excellent response times over the last year to water service requests, so that's requests across our stormwater, drinking water and wastewater systems, and we've met 98% of those urgent jobs and 91% of other jobs attended to within the timeframes that we promised. So we're delighted by that and very pleased with the collaboration that we have with City Care Water over improving that over some poor performance in previous years, so it's a good job. We have, of course, been commissioning the activated sludge plant out at the wastewater plant, and that work is completed, so we've fully commissioned, but we're now fine-tuning that activated sludge plant to improve the quality of the water going out to the ponds. And as you heard earlier this morning, the plant itself is running well, and what we're doing at the moment is increasing the flow of effluent through that plant so that we can improve the ponds. The final commissioning of the Littleton wastewater scheme is in progress so that we can stop all planned discharges to Littleton Harbour. At the moment there's only one of the three that's still discharging, and that's from the Littleton wastewater plant. We're progressing in Akaroa with the same target in terms of removing that Akaroa wastewater from the harbour. A lot of work's been done in Cashmere Worsley flood storage, and we've got the dam, which is the last part of that scheme, out to tender at the moment, and the Cashmere Stream enhancement work, which we've been working closely with the community. Now, this report doesn't cover July, but of course we all remember the wettest July, in fact the wettest month on record for Christchurch, and the teams did a lot of work to ready the city for that. We have all the infrastructure in place from work over the last 10 years, of course, but there's a whole lot of operational work that goes in, looking across our road network, our stormwater network, but also across our wastewater network and drinking water network. So all of those networks are prepared in advance of any significant wet weather event, and we do a lot of work to maintain those networks and the service to customers during events as well. So my thanks again to City Care and other contractors, and to our own teams for the response again and again and again through July. There was a lot of work, and I'm happy to answer questions.
I'm going to start with Pauline because this would normally go to her committee, so I'm going to defer to you, Pauline.
Thanks, Helen. Another great report here. Look, I've just got a question on page 269 with your the measure target for the real water loss. Why is our target 24% and not below that? And do you have any idea what number the regulator might land on for an acceptable target?
There's always an internal debate in terms of how we set those targets in terms of levels of service. So do we set what would be a best practice target and what we'd ultimately like to achieve through the infrastructure program and the investment in our network and also the operational program, or do we set what we think we can achieve within the next 3 and then 10 years of the long-term plan? And what we have agreed is to set what we think we can achieve given the investment that we're putting in. So that is our contract with the community, if you like. So that's why it's high, relatively high at that 24%. We would like to see that come down to 15% or better. And that will take place over the next decade, really, as we've upped the investment in the network. So we're improving the leakage as we increase that investment into our network infrastructure, and also have some targeted work. You'll notice in the commentary there that we're wanting to put more monitoring in, so that's part of our smart network work. So we have more monitoring across the city all of the time, and can then target those areas that have the higher water loss with some repairs rather than waiting for full renewals.
And so does that level of water loss, would that affect our any exemption application that we make?
Yes, it would.
We'd have to.
We don't know what the criteria and what the target would be yet, but yes, it would.
Okay. And just another question, if I may, on page, I think it's 351. Looking at the water services entity bill, and we're saying here the bill does not transfer assets and liabilities. Doesn't it take on the liabilities as well? Is that correct?
Sorry, where are you in the report?
It's in the paragraph, the Water Services Entity Bill, and it's the paragraph after the third bullet point. It says the bill does not transfer assets and liabilities from local authorities to water services entities. I thought it did take on the liabilities. If it's going to take the assets, or have I just read that wrong?
Look, I'll have to go back and talk to our policy team about the specifics of that and exactly what they're getting at. Oh, Jane's going to shed some light.
I think it's the next bill is going to address those issues. So this bill sets up the entities, but it doesn't deal with the asset transfer. So that will be the next bill that comes.
Oh, that's what it means. It's dealing with the assets and the liabilities in the next stage. Oh, thank you for clarifying that. Thanks, Leanne.
Thank you. Aaron.
Yeah, so Helen, just around the oxidation ponds, obviously the Swedish pumps are doing their job.
Yes, they are.
So, and then also I've been doing my very average scientific modelling for the many weeks, twice a week, and there was Canadian geese there on the weekend in every single pond. So that was a fantastic sign. And any update?
It's never good to see Canadian geese anywhere.
Well, in a dead pond, it's a good thing.
I hate them.
I hate them as well, but it was good to see them. So what? Yeah. So what's happening in the water now that they're back?
So we're not yet seeing a consistent improvement in the water quality of those ponds. So we did see an improvement through July, but that's just because 3/4 of the water going in was in fact stormwater and rainwater.
Good.
And so it flushed them out. But we are seeing higher dissolved oxygen levels in Pond 1. So Pond 1 is responding to the better quality of wastewater coming through, but that's not being sustained right through the ponds yet.
Okay, so why would the birds be on there? Is there bloodworms there yet?
So so dissolved oxygen is one measure, but before we had sort of free oxygen in those ponds, they were seriously anoxic and pretty foul, and so they have improved from that state. So the ponds are not as bad as they were prior to the July rains, but they're still not as good as they were a year ago.
Right.
So yeah, they're starting to come right.
Okay. And any idea how long that will take now that that's started?
Yeah, we're still targeting mid-September for that significant improvement in the water quality right through those ponds, and then a consequential reduction in those odours.
Right.
So it's all about that water quality.
And so that rain was the one positive, the one silver lining from that cloud.
It gave us a respite and a period of much, much lower odours, yes.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Phil.
Thanks, Helen. Just on Benrare pump station, that is so close to being started and online. Just for the people who are listening, so that is online with no chlorine being injected into it, just to be clear?
That's correct.
That's great. So where would the next one be if there was one with a tank being fixed and all that thing? When would the next one be? What would the next pumping station be that would be closest to that point?
Probably the ones in the southwest. So as we improve those pump stations at Dunbars and Sockburn.
Oh yeah, okay. And would they be at the point of Benrare at, say, Christmas time, for argument's sake?
No, I don't think so. So the work's on that. We've done a whole lot of the inspections, but there's quite a lot of works to be done on those tanks.
Okay, thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you. Any other question? Jimmy and Yanni.
Okay, but on page 356, the last second paragraph of the water safety plan, you mentioned now we agree, the regulator, Stormwater otherwise, upgrade from the update water safety plan 2021 rather than from the approved 2018.
That's
What
right.
I mean for this one?
What does it mean?
Yeah.
It means that we no longer have to go through the dreaded double sign-off for wellheads. So the wellheads, once they're signed off by a suitably specialised engineer,
Yeah.
then if everything else is okay in that zone, then the chlorine can be turned off. Previously, we had a double sign-off step where we had to have the drinking water assessor from the Ministry of Health also sign off those wells.
Okay, if that's true, so if some of the wellhead we already replaced, now we have no more those chlorinated water, am I right?
Yes. However, the updated water safety plan, as you know, also has much higher standards for both backflow prevention
Yes.
and for the integrity of our reservoirs and the condition of our reservoirs.
Yes.
So it's we've now addressed all of the high and medium hazard backflow premises,
Yes.
but we're in the process of working through the reservoirs and tanks. So
Yes.
it's the reservoirs and tanks that are now the sticking point, if you like, for removing chlorine. So they are the next in line for the upgrades.
Okay, if that's true, like the Denton Reservoir suction you mentioned already completed and replaced the wharf. So in the Hornby area or Templeton area, no more those chlorinated water.
Once we have the works completed and we have an assessment, we will be able to make that decision. Yes,
Who will undertake the assessment?
we use external engineers to make that assessment.
Council engage with them.
Council engages those engineers. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. Just reading on the page 10, or it's 358, you go through the 4 unacceptable risks from the Christchurch Littleton plan. So I presume that's now the one that we've got in place.
Yes.
And you reference the 4 risks, and 2 of those you say that we've addressed, which is that the risks of lead contamination and backflow are now deemed acceptable. So really the only, well, obviously the civil emergency one, which is just always going to be there, we can't control that. But and number 1 is the storage tank. So
That's correct.
can you just give a sense of what the quantum of work that's required to get that risk to acceptable, and what the time frame is for doing it?
Yes, so we have drafted a report which is coming to another council meeting to address that. So we've gone through that, and we'll bring that report to council because we know that is the big question. And we've also outlined what the timeline is for applying for exemptions from chlorine, from residual disinfection, and address that by water supply zone across the city. So we'll bring that report to you.
Right. Do you know when that report's coming?
Next meeting of council,
Okay.
Which is the 8th of
8th of September.
And will that, I was trying to understand, Te Mata Arawai, they're going to set all these regulations quite soon, and then we've got a very short period to meet them. I mean,
Te Mata Arawai have been issuing drafts of both the regulations and standards, and
Okay.
we've been submitting on those and working closely with them. So the regulations and standards are never a surprise when they come out in final
Okay.
form.
so just on again, page 358, drinking water quality assurance rules, drinking water acceptable solutions, published 25 July 2022, anticipated date, August 2022, anticipated time frame, comes into effect 14th November 2022.
Yes.
So how confident are you that we're going to be able to meet those rules and solutions?
We
by
won't.
that?
We will not be able to meet all of them, and that'll also be covered in the report. So, as well as applying for exemptions from residual disinfection as a tool for managing risks of contamination in a zone, you can also apply for exemptions from those monitoring requirements. And there are some sort of technical monitoring requirements that we will not be able to comply with immediately because we have to update the monitoring equipment that we've got in place, or update the frequency with which that equipment takes readings, or update the way that we record that data and then send it up to Te Mata Arawai. So there are a few sort of technical exemptions that we will also be applying for.
Right. And so
And that'll be the case right across the country.
But with your
because it's quite a
discussions
change.
so far, that you're relatively confident about where we sit in that space?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, as I say, there's quite a big change and
Yeah.
quite an uptick in the monitoring and reporting requirements.
But that's the case for 67.
That's the case for all of the water supplies across the
Yes,
country.
but-
So everybody will be trying to improve their systems.
what I'm trying to understand is, will that have any impact on our exemption for removing the residual disinfection?
No, that's about the reservoirs and
Right,
tanks.
so it's mainly the four risks there
Yeah.
are the only ones we need to be worried about if we want to take chlorine, apply for an exemption to take chlorine out.
No, they're not the only ones that we need to worry about, and we'll outline those in the report.
Right.
So Councillor Cotter touched on one before in terms of leakage, and leakage is being used as a proxy for network condition, if you like. So that is another concern
But-
for us,
sorry.
and something that we need to address. And as I said, I don't know what the criteria will be, so I don't know how they're going to evaluate the
But
leakage rate.
But the chlorine, the residual disinfection, chlorine doesn't have. What's the relationship between the risk of water leakage?
It's about the integrity of your
Sucking out.
network and how often you have breaks.
If you have a break and it sucks stuff
And it
into
sucks
Yeah.
contamination back into the network as a result of the break.
That's the worry.
And the
but-
loss of
but-
pressure.
But under pressure,
Right.
yeah.
But with all the monitoring that we've done, surely post-earthquake, we would have very good data and evidence around the impact that or the risk that would have had.
So one of the things that we've been very clear about in our update of the water safety plan is that we're responding to the intent of the legislation and the new regulations and standards, which all have a much lower appetite for risk than previously. So whereas previously we considered the integrity of the network and the likelihood of contamination following a break to be acceptable, and we still do in our water safety plan, we still don't know what the Te Mata Arawai view of that will be in the context of a network that has no residual chlorine in it. So there's a difference in terms of the standard and the criteria to which you'll be held if you have residual chlorine in your network and if you don't.
Yeah.
And that's where we don't know where the line is.
Do we have a best case scenario for when we would be likely to apply and get approval for an exemption if it goes
Yes,
to plan?
we have set that out in the next report.
I heard Helen
okay.
say that there is a report coming to the next meeting of the council
Okay.
with a lot of detail in it, and that will be the time to drill into it. I'm actually wondering whether it might be useful for councillors to get a bit of a an opportunity to workshop that paper before it comes to the council meeting, and then the council meeting we can have a very detailed presentation, but councillors will obviously not ask
Certainly,
questions.
we can set up a briefing or a
And
workshop.
maybe,
Yeah.
and maybe also just some
Tuesdays.
public-facing communications around, what's going on. Because I mean, the report's good, but when you read through it, it's so confusing, and it feels like all these new things have been added that
Yanni,
we have to think.
we
So
have been in a
Yeah.
constant state of change.
yeah, I
And
know.
at the
Yeah,
same time, and I think it's right and proper to acknowledge the staff who
Yeah.
not only are managing BAU, managing the outcome of
Totally.
a severe fire
Yeah.
and the damage caused at our wastewater treatment plant, and supplying the Department of Internal Affairs and the National Transition
Yeah.
Unit with all of the data and information that they need to transfer something where we don't know where the end
Yeah.
point is
No,
going to
absolutely.
be. They
Totally.
are continuing to do all of this work
Yeah.
while seeking to get us to a point where we can apply for an
Yeah.
exemption to a regime that came about because of an event in the North Island, of which we distinguished our own performance
Yeah.
many times over, but to no avail.
Totally
The
agree,
default
like,
provision in
yeah.
the Act is that we chlorinate, and this organisation is still doing everything within its power
Yeah,
to meet the criteria, which have been strengthened and
Yeah.
strengthened and
I know,
tightened
and that's I guess
and the
that
bar has been
that's
lifted
kind of why I
several
was
times
trying to
over.
get something, public facing to the community, because actually our staff have done an amazing job with a field where the goalposts have shifted just about at every stage of the process.
Every time you ask them, or anyone, so every time I ask them in public, when will we be able to take the chlorine out, and staff helpfully indicate under the rules that apply at that time when they think that
Yeah.
that would be the case, that then becomes the position in the public mind as to why the heck have we still got chlorine in our water. And what I want us to be able to do is to actually hand over to the new council with a clear understanding of the pathway forward, but it is not this organisation's fault, and nor is it the decisions that we made to actually lift our wellheads or bring them forward in a program of work as a result of the initial problem that we had, which was that we had so many below ground wellheads that they were never going to get signed off, no matter how safe and no matter how well protected they were. They had to be lifted above ground. That has cost a significant investment by the council, and I'm glad that
Yeah.
the council's made it. But
We'll get the report
it's been
back
a
and we can put some
huge
comms out
program of
around it.
work. And
Yeah.
excuse my frustration,
No, that's
but I'll
fine.
probably not get a chance to do that again.
Yeah,
So,
it's totally acknowledge the work that staff have done, and there's a lot of really good information in here. And I guess when that report comes back, it will be really good, and hopefully we can just put some public-facing
Yes.
comments around
I
what we've
agree.
been doing, because actually, that's quite significant. We've addressed 2 of the 4 risks that are within our control, and we've got 1 more to go, which is a big one, I know. But actually, it's really good that we've finished that work, and I know staff have been working really hard on that. I just wanted to ask about the
So I'll just note that when that report comes to council, so our communications and engagement team are working on a communications plan to accompany that.
Yeah,
Great.
So they are doing that work.
Yeah,
Good.
cool.
Yep.
And just wanted to check on the wastewater treatment plant. So just in terms of the process, like just wanted to check on the ponds. We're trying to get the activated sludge, and that's going to take a few weeks to work through.
So the activated sludge is established.
Yeah,
So we converted 2 of the 4 clarifiers to aeration basins, and we've
Yeah.
established the activated sludge process in 2 of those clarifiers. That is working well.
right.
What we're doing now, as was set out this morning, is trying to working to increase the amount of effluent that's going through that process. So at the moment it's about 1 cubic metre per second.
And we
going
want to get
through,
to 1.5.
And we're wanting to get it up to 1.5, so that
Yeah.
that gets more of the effluent treated to a higher standard before it's discharged to the ponds.
Yeah, so I think the concern that people have is that they just kind of want to see the improvement. And so I just wanted to kind of understand in terms of the process, and I know this is something I've put forward before, but the opportunity to put in some temporary trickling filters will not help. Like, if we could, have we thought about any sort of other process?
So back in, so the work on the options for the interim process
Yeah.
was done at the end of last year and signed off in December. So that the work on the options was all done then, and temporary trickling filters were discounted as not the best and not the fastest process to establish, and that's why we went to the activated sludge process.
So when we get to the middle of September, and the weather, I know the weather hopefully will improve with the sunlight, isn't it? The more sun we get,
Yeah, the more
better the
sun and the more
improvement.
wind that we get through spring.
Yeah.
That's right.
But if we get to mid-September, and we're still seeing the sorts of odours that we're seeing, the last 2 weeks, what are we looking at? Any other options to mitigate the impact of that odour? Is there anything else that we can consider doing
Yes.
that might reduce the odour, and if so,
Yes, so there's 3 things, 2 sort of temporary quick fix ones. So we still have in place the ability to bring on the polymer dosing, which will increase the removal of solids, so we can put that back. We still have in place the ability to add peroxide to the effluent going into the ponds, so we can do that. And we are sourcing mechanical aerators for Pond 1, which also require an enormous amount of power to be brought to Pond 1. So that work is underway. So those things are all continuing behind the scenes, if you like. We've also got another option that we're exploring at the moment. We don't know if it'll be practical or not. So we're just assessing the feasibility of changing the way we use the primary settlement tanks and the secondary contact tanks, and turning a couple of those tank lines into additional aerated sludge process, so that we can get even more than the 1.5 QMX that we've got at the moment. So yes, we're constantly looking at what we can do to tune the plant to get the best possible effluent quality into those ponds.
sorry, just because you've mentioned it, but what stops us from doing the polymer dosing or the peroxide dosing now, given that we've got the bad odours? Is it anything, or is it?
At the moment, the dissolved oxygen going into Pond 1 is quite good, so it's improved considerably, and it's getting that water working its way all the way through all of the ponds, so it takes time for that to happen. So adding more oxygen is not going to make it faster to get that better quality water through the pond, if you like.
Clear. So that's why we'd wait till the water has worked, the new stuff has worked its way through the entire ponds.
Yes.
And then if we still had a problem, then we would put it in.
Yeah, well, the peroxide dosing is really for if we have any interruptions to the process. So, as you know, we don't have any redundancy with the plant and under its interim operation. So if we have a major breakdown with pumps or with one of those aeration basins, then we would immediately move to putting those backup processes in place to reduce the load.
I've got, is it Phil and Aaron?
Sorry, this will be quick. I see on the Sydenham suction tank that it's a stainless steel structure.
Yes.
And you're held up by global constraints. Could we, and I don't know if we can, just uplift the tank design that's at Benrare and plonk it there? Is it as simple as that? Because there's a lot more shingle and cement in New Zealand than there is stainless steel, which has to be spiral welded. I'm just wondering more than anything else.
So we're almost certainly going to move to stainless steel tanks as our standard
In the long
solution in the long run. Yes, a couple of reasons for that. First of all, they're better in terms of the carbon footprint. Ironically, when you think about stainless steel, but it's about how much recycled steel you can get in there. And also they are much more secure in terms of water supply security. So
they're better than a concrete tank.
They're better
overall.
than the concrete tanks.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron?
It was just a really small addition to your list of what staff are working on. There was also a couple of medium flood events in the last month as well on that long list that you listed that they were doing. So let's not leave it out.
Helen had actually mentioned the wettest July in history.
Yeah.
Spectacular.
Yeah, no, I absolutely acknowledge the flood events. Andrew.
Thank you, and I'll also keep this quick. The Wastewater Akaro Reclaimed Water Treatment Reuse Scheme, so this is page 382, Robinson's Bay. I'm very pleased to see that the project has been investigating increasing the setback distance between irrigation zones and archaeological areas. Is there any update on that, or do you know when there will be?
No, I'll have to ask the project manager on that. So
Can
I'll
I
get that.
request that the community board and the community are updated as soon as possible once that update's available, just given the anxiety that there's been in that particular community about that particular matter?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any other questions? Pauline, would you like to move this? And seconded by Sarah. Is there any debate? Pauline.
Just quickly, most of it's been said, but look, just to thank Helen and the team for this incredible work and an excellent report as usual. I think it's really, really good. Look, the Three Waters area and council represents such a massive portion of what we deliver to the people of Christchurch. There's not much of you, Helen, but you've obviously got very big shoulders that you carry this whole program, you know. Look, it's really good to see the Wastewater, Akaroa Wastewater Reuse Scheme progressing as per the hearings panel recommendation there. That was a really good outcome. And also the Littleton Wastewater Project, to see that wastewater will cease to go into the harbour from September. And both of these are addressing our cultural priorities as well, so that they're both really big pieces of work. And of course, recognising the work on the storage basins in the Upper Heathcote, the massive investment there has been huge, and a massive benefit for protecting people's homes from flooding in and around the Heathcote River corridor. And we also have to recognise the huge amount of planning work that goes into this project and this program, and also in preparing for forward works, but at the same time improving the reactive response times in the maintenance and operation areas, and that's really good to see. Look, you know, we know what the huge challenges are for this area, not forgetting the wastewater treatment plant fire at the moment, just on top of everything else. And the drinking water infrastructure improvement program has been ongoing for many years and doing very well. And it's also great to see the collaboration and action by working with the community on the water quality projects around our waterways. That's really lovely to see. And also, as Aaron just mentioned again, and Leanne and you yourself, the particular challenges from our incredibly severe and frequent wet weather events, and not to mention the top-down pressures from the government and all the information and work they're demanding to feed into the Three Waters. So, you know, and there's way, way more that could be said about this whole program and behind that, Helen. So thank you again for this amazing report. Thank you for the work that you've been bringing to the committee and the information and the responses you've given us along the way. So well done. And if you could pass our thanks on to everybody, please, be great.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you.